Okay, I'm back working on my 2004 Nissan Quest. We're going to be replacing this rear center mount and the mount over here for the transmission here today. And we've got both of the mounts sitting here, our new mounts. Now I've went ahead and we've got the vehicle up on ramps. You're going to want to get it up off the ground by some means because you're actually going to be working from underneath the vehicle. Make sure to chalk your wheels. Now it also goes without saying you want to make sure your vehicle is completely cooled down. You're going to be up here working on removing some things in the exhaust, and it needs to be completely cool before you start this process. Okay, so we come under here in the center. We see this exhaust piece that runs back through here, and you can see where somebody's done some work on this, but don't pay any attention to that. And you should have we got some bolts that are coming in here. Somebody has, looks like, replaced these at one time or another and put various different bolts, but these ones, there's like 3 around through here. These are 14s, and got some other various sizes, but we are going to need to remove these first of all. I got these loosened off, but we're going to need to remove these, and so we can separate this piece or this section here, because we're going to need to actually drop this down from the engine and get it loose here. So the first thing we're going to do is get started on these and these. Okay, we got these bolts out, and these nuts and bolts are out here. So this is loose. Now if these haven't been broken off already, you'll want to get a screwdriver and push underneath these clips here. It'll slide off. You don't need to remove this one. This one right here, go ahead and disconnect it though. This is the tabs they clip onto. Just push underneath that little rectangle with a screwdriver and they'll pop off there. I can see this one's been broken at one time or another because someone's been messing with it. But anyways, go ahead and take this one loose, the green one. You're going to need that loose. So this here is loose. Now the next thing we're going to do is move right back here, and you can see that we've got a couple of bolts back here. I think these are 12s, I believe. But we got one up here, and then we got one. This is just the bracket that holds up this section of pipe, and we need to go ahead and get that. It's going to drop down a little bit, which is what we want, and it gives us a little bit more room, and also frees it up from this engine here. Now I guess I should point something out. If yours has not been messed with, you will have a section right back there where I'm pointing my finger. Now you could just as easily go ahead and disconnect that section where, see right here, there would be an intermediate catalyst right here, and you could remove it at that section right back there and simply take this out of the way, which would be perfect, just to get it completely out of your way. I can't do that because it's welded, so I would have to go farther back and disconnect at this clamp up here, and I don't really need to do that. It's not necessary. So ever how you want to do it, I'm just going to be taking this loose and dropping it down though. Okay, so this is those 12s. Just going ahead and taking this first one out here, and then we'll get on that back one there. Just kind of get a hand on it. It'll kind of drop down on you once you remove these two. Okay, there is those 2 bolts out of there, and you can see how it's dropped down here now, but we just took it out of that bracket there, and so this one's disconnected, so now it's just dropped down here. It's going to fall down about that far, which is fine. Okay, here's where it gets fun. We're back here at this rear catalyst coming down off of the exhaust manifold. We got 4 of these running around here. Now these 2 are going threaded in directly, these bolts, and then as I come around to this back side here, if I can even show you, there's a couple of bolts that are coming through, and they're not real easy to get to. You have to use a swivel, and I've got them broken loose here. But you're going to need an extension to get up in here, and there's not a whole lot of room, but we've got to get these 4 bolts. There's 2 up in this front, and then there's 2 in the back that are really difficult to see. Now the problem was the bolts in the back are not threaded directly in, and there's not any anti-rotation tabs on this one. So I actually have to come through it. I got to hold it from the top with a wrench, if you can see that one, and then while I work the bottom loose. But the good thing was, once they were broke loose, they come pretty easy with your hands. So we're just going to work on taking these out here, and we're going to drop this down. Okay, so I have those bolts out. Like I said, you can see the bottom ones are threaded, the top ones are not. So it actually had a bolt I had to hold on the top for a minute till I got it loose while I loosened the bottom nut. So this is loose here. This sensor here is loose. So these are rather difficult to get to, but you can get to them. I come through this side over here, working my arm up through here to hold a wrench, and using the extension to come through the bottom, and a swivel for those top ones there, and a ratchet wrench for the one on the left. But you can get to them, they're just not real easy. And so with that, this is loose, so I'm going to just wiggle it around here, and we'll go ahead and drop it down out of the way. Now you can see that's where your upper O2 sensor is too, and I don't know how many people have had the lovely job of replacing that, but that just does not look like it's very much fun either. But anyways, that's out of the way, and now we can see our mount over here, and we'll talk about that here in a second. I want to show you these bolts. Okay, so I want to show you this. This part is bolting up to your exhaust manifold. Now the way this one was set up, there's a couple of these bolts going into this wider part of the flange, and actually had threads, so those bolted right in. But the top had these bolts coming down, so this would be the part you would be removing. So the bolt was on the top back here on the manifold, so I had to hold that while loosening this. So I may figure out some kind of an anti-rotation tab before sticking that back on, because it's really unnecessary. Don't know what was on there before, because somebody else had already took this loose. So I'm not real sure on that, but I don't think that it was set up this way. If it was, it's not a very good setup, because these are difficult to get to as it is. You know, you have to get back in there with either a ratchet wrench or use a swivel or something, and then you're having to hold this, and it's just way too difficult, more difficult than it has to be. Okay, so here we are back under the car. Just want to talk about something before we get started. This is going to be your biggest task. You can see these 2 lower bolts here. Now this one right here, already done a trial run, so I flipped that bolt around. So in other words, that bolt is coming through this side instead of coming through the other way, which originally it was coming through the other way. And I can show you, you can see right here, if you try to pull that bolt out that way, you're going to hit the transmission. So you've got a couple options. You can either cut that bolt and get another bolt about that size, a grade 8 bolt, and it doesn't really matter if it's the same exact threads. Get a grade 8 bolt with a locking nut, or use Loctite that's roughly the length and the size, and put back in there, or get another replacement bolt to use. Or what you have to do, you can see you have to get it up. I got it up to this point right here where you see that indentation, and I was able to knock that bolt out of there. So I did a trial run to see how it would go, but my personal favorite would be to cut the bolt, because it'd be way easier. So you have to lift that up, and I'll show you exactly how you do that. To be able to lift this up, you've got to remove this mount over here, and I'll show you how to position this thing, but you have to remove the nuts on this mount, and you position it back here at this back, and you're basically twisting the thing up without removing this front mount. Now you could remove this too, but the way I did it was just taking this one and having the bolt out of this one back here and lifting it up. But right now we're going to go ahead and just remove these, because I can get these out now. But you can see for this one in the back right there, I've got an extension that's coming through over here. You can see my extension, that black extension right there. I'm coming behind this heat shield right here. Got a deep 17 millimeter on there. I'm going to get my ratchet back there, and I've got also a wrench right there on the other side, right in there. If you can see that, that's just holding that side from turning while I break this loose. Now these are pretty tight when you first break them loose, so you'll have to get out there, maybe even have to use a cheater pipe. But you can see I've already got this one loose because I did the trial run. But I'm going to go ahead, we're going to remove that back one. So I'm holding it on this side, and I'm going to get out there with my ratchet and get this loose. Okay, so I'm over here loosening this. You can see that wrench hits right there, so when I am using my ratchet, it's going to hold it into place there while I'm taking this loose. So I'm just working that bolt out of there. But you definitely want to break it loose from the nut side, because these are extremely tight. Okay, there is the first nut, 17 millimeter. Now these, depending on the tension, these bolts may or may not push out of there yet. That one did. And you just come around this other side, try to grab it. It's hanging up a little bit, so we may have to jack this up some because it's wanting to hang up. But anyways, we're going to go ahead. Like I said, this one here is going to be the one you're going to have the most difficulty with, because the bolt originally is going to be coming through the other way. So without cutting it, you have to lift this engine up. You can see like 4 or 5 inches, and run the risk of, you know, hitting some stuff. And so I got this nut off this other side. So there's that other nut there. And so here's this bolt. Now this will have some tension on it until we get a jack up here. The back one came out. Now on top of all this fun stuff, there is a 10 millimeter that comes through the back of this right here. You have to go back through with a 10 millimeter ratchet wrench back behind this panel, come from the back side, and get that out. Now it'd probably be easier just to knock it off there, because it's very difficult to get out. I spent a good deal of time working on that one little 10 millimeter there, but that does have to come out. So you can see right here, the designers and all their infinite wisdom decided to have the bolt coming through from this other side. I've already flipped it around, but you're going to have to either cut it or lift this up that much. You see how far you have to go. I got to right here, this little nook, and I was able to knock that bolt out of there. Kind of boogered the threads right on the very end a little bit, but I cleaned it up with my Dremel, and the bolt's just fine. But that's how I did it. But I think if I did it again, I'd just have an extra bolt and just cut that thing, because it's way more work, and having to lift it up like that, and you got to be cautious, and you don't want to break nothing. You go to lifting engines and stuff, and it gets kind of tricky. So, you know, other than dropping your subframe, you know, it's just short of taking the engine out to get to this thing the way that it was designed. But I was able to get it out by lifting and knocking that bolt out of there. And I would, like I said, I think I would just take something, just cut the bolt, because if it comes through this side, you got plenty of room coming through this side. Now the other bolt ain't a problem because it's not hitting where the transmission is at. This bolt right here should have been designed to come through this way. It doesn't make any difference which way the bolt comes through. It's going to work, but it should have been designed to come through this way. Even the other bolt, if it was to slide out this way, you could get it past that heat shield and still get it out of there. So you could put them both through this way if you wanted to. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and get my jack. We're going to get to work over here before we can lift. We got to remove some bolts over here on this transmission mount. And also we're going to get over there on that 17 that's coming through right up here, that long bolt. Okay, we're about to get on this bolt that is actually coming through here. We got the bolts, the nuts, the 17s. We're going to get this big long bolt. Now it has a welded nut on the bracket, so we don't have to worry about holding it. We just have to get over here on this driver's side and get that loose. Now, this is the mount we're going to be removing before we lift on this. We've got 3 studded bolts coming up through here, and we've got these nuts that are holding to this, and we're going to be having to get this loose anyways. Well, actually, we don't have to take those out. We could just take the ones from here. We're going to be replacing this, so whichever one you want to do. You can take the nuts off of here when lifting it, or you could take them out of here and lift it up. It might be better to simply take the nuts off of here so you know you're going to get it aligned properly, but whichever way will work. I don't know if I've mentioned, make sure to get you some safety glasses when you're working under here. It's very dirty. Okay, I've got a probably a 2-foot extension here. We're going to get under here. We're going to be going through like back behind here where this CV axle is, and positioning on this, this 17 millimeter over here. I'm just going to crawl under here. Now, it would probably be easier if you had it all blocked up and had the wheels out of the way. You can actually see more of what you're doing, but this works this way. Okay, I don't know if you can see where I'm going up in here, but I'm fixing to get up on that bolt. That's the 17 millimeter bolt that my extension's going on to there, and we are going to get our ratchet back out here and go ahead and start removing that. We're going to take it completely out. Like I said, if there's any tension, we'll get the jack and we'll get the tension off where we can remove it. Okay, so I've got it completely loose. I'm just reaching up in here and grabbing this. And you can see that's a pretty long bolt, about a 6-inch bolt or so. And we've got it out of that spot, so we're going to go ahead and get our jack ready, and we're going to get over here on this transmission mount. Okay, here's our transmission mount. Like I said, you can take these bolts out either way. We can remove them here, got them loose. We can lift it up that way. I'm going to be replacing this. So we've got 2 more here. I'm going to be removing this, and like I said, if you're doing this rear one, you will definitely want to go ahead and replace this one if it hasn't been replaced. It's like, you know, it's the time to do it because we're going to be lifting it up and having to remove it anyways. I'm going to go ahead and take these two outright, these two 14s right here. I'm going to go ahead and remove these. It's not going to go anywhere. Okay, so I'm just taking these out. This one here is a really long one, and the other side is pretty short bolt there. But this is what you have to do to remove this mount. Now, if you're just simply lifting it, you could lift it up by just taking those studded bolts off. You just want to be cautious when raising and lowering something like this. You don't want to booger your threads up on your studded bolts there, so I would probably recommend taking these loose too, so you got a little bit of wiggle room, or just take these and simply just lift this up and set it back on here carefully. It will move some, so you have to kind of guide it back into place. Okay, and that's what those two bolts look like there. So that one's really long, it's on the left side. So we're going to go ahead and get our jack. I'm going to show you how to position this. Okay, so I brought my jack under here, and I've got a wooden block on there, and you can see how I'm at the back as far as I can get. And they said you could take the bolt out of this front mount, so you could just lift the whole thing, but I was just interested in twisting it enough. Like I said, lifting it up a lot, you got to be concerned with a lot of different things, and plus you don't have your CV axles out, so you have to be careful and watch stuff. But you can see it's no joke. You got to come up pretty high. Like I said, I had to get to that indention right there before I could knock that bolt out. So it's almost just better to cut it and get another one, and then put it through. When you put it back this direction, I doubt that you'll ever be replacing it again. And this one made it 213,000 miles before starting to dry rot, so they last pretty good. But just because it may look good from out here doesn't mean that it is. So okay, so at this point, like I said, we got that 10mm out, both bolts are out, the center long bolt's out, so it's loose. But we're going to lift it up a little bit, and with our jack, you know, use jack stands, blocks, whatever, be safe. But we're going to lift it up a little bit just to give me a little bit of room to wiggle this thing out. So we're going to take it up a few inches here. And I had this up much higher than this earlier. Like I said, if you're going to be taking that bolt out, you're going to have to take that thing way on up there to be able to push it out. But I've got it high enough to where I can do what I need to do now, because I've already reversed that bolt. And I've also, by the same token, I've got it up high enough to be able to remove this mount over here that I'm going to be replacing. So like I said, it's definitely best to do at least these two at the same time. So we've got it up enough. We're going to go ahead and push back in that direction, and then we're going to start wiggling this thing up and off of here. And we just have to wiggle it around and rotate it in a manner that we can work it out. And sometimes you got to just work with stuff, but I'll show you the condition of this once we get it out of here. Okay, so the first thing I've done, once I got the slide, just lifted it up there and kind of flipped it back, and we're going to just orient this thing to where we can bring it right through here. So we're just going to flip it around until we can get it nosed through here. And I know we got this like tab. We won't be putting that bolt back in that heat shield. I can figure out a different way of fastening that, or it'll just have to rattle, because that's just ridiculous to get to. Okay, so here we come through here. we're working it through. And like I said, once you get the bolts out, you're home free. This stuff is just a matter of wiggling it and working it through here. But you've got room. It's just like anything else, you got to flip it around in the right direction. So we'll get it out here and we'll take a look at this. Okay, and here's a view of this out here, and you can see, you know, when you look in there, you think, well, it looks fine, but then when you pull it out, you can see that's all separated right there from the dry rot. So it's just that much more vibration that you have. And like this end here, it says it's 213,000 miles, but just like any rubber over time. So you know, you can't really tell a lot of times, so it's important, you know, to get in there, and if these haven't been changed, you know, you can tell a new one from an old one. So it's definitely going to fix those issues up. Now we're going to go ahead, all I have to do is lift this one off. We've got the bolts out. We'll just go over here and lift that piece off. Okay, so here's this one, and we should have enough slack that we can just lift it out of here. I am hung up a little bit. We may have to give it a little bit more. There we go. So, and then on the same token, we can see, so you couldn't really see that either, but that's the weak point. And so then you got that extra movement right there as well. So here's a difference, our nice new mounts. No cracking. You see all the cracking and separation going on with these. So you know, it's a good idea to check these out. This one, I will say, is not a very easy task, but definitely cutting that bolt is going to speed up the process because you shouldn't have to lift it up that much. We're going to go ahead and set this one in place first here. Okay, we're going to go right back in the same way. We'll just get it up on those nubs there. Should be able to wiggle it back in there, but we may have to take it up a little bit. Oh, and I just dropped it. Okay, so I did have to lift that up a little bit higher for this replacement mount here. And so we're gonna leave those nuts and out for now down there. We're going to leave those out till we get this all back into alignment. Then we're going to go ahead and work on putting our other mount back into place here. Okay, I've actually got it lifted up about where it was when I took that bolt out the first time. As it turned out, I had to lift it up a little higher to get that transmission mount. I'm just going to nose her back up in here and get this top. We're going to get this top bolt, the long bolt, going in first. As you can see, you got plenty of room to get this in. Just wiggle it around up in here, get it into position. Okay, and what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go back on the other side. I'm going to lift it up and get this long bolt started first. I found that this one seems to be more difficult for me. These pretty well go into place pretty good, but I'm going to lift it up and start that bolt, the long bolt in there, and just get that one just loosely into place, and then we'll go to lowering it. Now when we lower it, we're going to watch this over here because it's going to want to get off of alignment and it'll try to hit, so we'll have to move that part around or shift it or whatever we need to do to get it back into alignment. Okay, the way that top bolt up there works, you get on the other side, you have to push this mount up, and it's best to have you a light or a flashlight or something pointed in that direction so you can see to line it up with the hole on that mount. So you have to lift it up and then get it started there. All I'm going to do now is I'm going to guide this. You can see how I'm off a little bit. So I'm going to guide this on as I'm lowering it here and get it into place. It shifted a little bit. So it needs, once I lower it, it should start shifting back in this direction. But I'm going to watch this. I'm going to watch that out there as I'm lowering. And I just barely got that bolt up there started. The one up there, the long one. So I've got slack. But we'll shift it as need be as we're lowering this down here. Okay, and I'm just using this pry bar so my hand's not up there, just to barely pull this over as I'm lowering this down. Don't want it to catch on that lip. And then I'm watching this over here. Looks like that's going into place nicely over there. I'm just making sure it's not hitting on that outer edge there. You can see I want to make sure that that goes right inside of that its slot right there. Well, it's nothing critical. I'm just easing it down just to make sure that everything's going to go smoothly here. And once we're pretty much home free, let's say we'll get the bolt going in from the right side this time and we won't have any trouble. Okay, and we're going into place nicely. We about got it down here. This is lining itself back up nicely. And see why I left those nuts out there? It allows this thing to tilt a little bit until it gets into alignment good. And then once it sets down, it'll pretty much line itself up. So we're just going to go ahead and lower it on down here. Now before I get too far ahead of myself here, what we're going to need to do is make sure that we're able to get these bolts in here before we go to moving this jack. And it seems like it might have to go back up just a smidgen. It's got a little bit too much tension on it. So we'll just go back up a little bit so we can take the tension off. So we're going through this side. We need to go a little more until we can get our bolt in there. And get it lined up. And it's still got a little bit of tension. I'm just going to wiggle that around. And we're going to go ahead, probably get this other bolt, just put it back through the back side because it seems to be the easiest for it. We'll go ahead and get those back into place. I'm just going to have to jack it up to get a little bit of tension off of it here. Okay, so the way this works, you got to find that sweet spot there with your jack to where you can slide these things through easily. The front one went through no problem. The back one was being a little bit more difficult, so I had to kind of work with it a little bit and jack it back up, and I'm kind of turning it. And I've got it enough threads there now. I'm just going to put the 17mm nut on here and just pull it on through there. But remember, you got to hold the other side with the wrench. And as far as this one here, we can get to it very easily with just a ratchet or anything up here. Why don't we go ahead and start tightening that rear one and get it snugged down a little bit, and then I'll get the nut on the front one there and we'll start snugging that up. But it's definitely not an easy task doing this mount. There's really nothing easy about it, but it's got to be done. We're pretty much home free now, though. We're going to get these snugged down. We'll snug our bolt up here, and then we'll work on getting our exhaust and stuff back into place here. And other than that, we've about got it. Okay, I'm just holding this right here with this little ratchet and tightening with the ratchet wrench back here. And I'll just push that heat shield back out of the way a little bit so I could get that on there. But like I said, you can use an extension coming behind it, but with that 10mm out, I can just push it back out of the way. So I'm just snugging this up a little bit. Okay, so I've got those plenty tight. I'm going to go ahead and get out here on the other side with my 2-foot extension. And we're going to get that long bolt coming from that other direction over there. Okay, so now we're just coming up through here with our long extension and getting that bolt right there from this driver's side. You can see that 17 millimeter, just snugging that down. Okay, now we just had this lowered back down. We're just pushing this, wiggling this thing a little bit and lining it up and getting our bolts started in here. Then we'll get our nuts on there. Okay, now we're just going to get these 3 nuts and get them snug back down, these 14s. Okay, so I just took the time. I've been making me some little anti-rotation tabs here, and I'm just using some of my aluminum angle, and I cut off, well actually I drilled a hole before I cut it and then I cut it off, and I'm just tucking this bolt's got a flare, so I ground one side there. Accuracy is kind of key with this. You want to, you know, get that hole as centered as you can, so nothing special, it just fits in there, and when it's up against that flat, and this will come up here, it'll be coming through the manifold here somewhere, and then that'll go over there and hit and prevent that from turning while I'm tightening this nut that's going underneath here. So that's all it's going to do. Just made a couple of them for the back. I don't see any reason why these shouldn't work, but I can shorten them up if I need to. But don't forget about this little ring. It likes to fall off of there. So getting ready just to get this back in the vehicle here, and we're going to try these out and see how it's going to work, and hopefully it's going to make things a little bit easier. Okay, so we're back underneath the vehicle here. I'm going to show you how I'm putting these on. So it's going to go like this. However, I'm going to work this one on first because it's going to be harder to get up here to this side. But just like I said, once you start turning them, they're just going to rotate just like that. And hopefully I'm going to be able to get up here and get to this with my little ratchet wrench, reach around and do that, or I'll use the swivel. But you can see how difficult they are to get to this back, and those are the ones that aren't tapped like these front ones. The bolts are just going directly into these, so we need something to hold that still. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just getting ready to set this piece back up in here. Like I said, that round ring's going to seal that. Okay, so that's all I've done, and other than just pushing those down a little bit, it's pretty easy to start them there. So those are the hardest ones, so we're going to go ahead and I've just tightened them by hand a little bit. So now I'm just going to go ahead and work my front one. You can see how much easier that will make things, not to have to use 2 hands to hold the bolt and while you're tightening, because once you get it snug, it doesn't take much to hold it in place. And we're going to go ahead and get our other bolts up here in the front now. Okay, so I'm just snugging these down here in the front now, and it's not a bad idea to at least put some anti-seize on these that are going into this manifold, and not too bad idea to put it on all of them. I'm going to get back here on the other ones. I think I'm just going to use my little ratchet wrench. Okay, so I've got a 14 here, and I'm going to try to show you where I'm at over here. And as you can see, these will not turn. We're just going to snug it down real good, because it doesn't take a lot to hold it, and it doesn't have to be just crazy tight. You know, let's get them snug. So as you can see, those are working. Okay, so we've snugged all these down just as tight as we can get them with our little ratchet wrench and ratchet. And we're going to go ahead and put that back up there. I think we're going to go ahead at this point and get this hooked up right here. You can see it's broken, but it's still getting the job done, I guess, here. But only thing we got to do now is go ahead and get this back up here. Now what's easier, get you a jack stand and lift this back up and have it hold it while you're getting this in place, otherwise it's kind of difficult. And you'll want to get back here at this back part and give it a little pull as you're putting this back up here to take up that slack, otherwise it'll be kind of setting out a little bit far and make it difficult. Okay, there's my stand in place. I said you could go ahead and fasten that up first if you want. I just like to have the slack. It's easier to put this one on first, it seemed like. So I've got all the bolts in place and just getting ready just to snug these up right here, and then we'll just be replacing the bolts in that bracket. Okay, so we're just back here getting these final two right here. We'll just double check everything looks good. Now right here, I don't really like this gap, but for some reason this is not matching up with whatever they replaced here, so I'm gonna keep an eye on that. Okay, so I took this thing and drove it around a little bit, and most all of the vibrations are completely gone. It actually kind of surprised me that it fixed that much of it. I think I still have a minor issue because of the CV axle over here on the passenger side, so I'm going to have to deal with that, but overall the vibration is not very bad at all. It's a tremendous difference from what it was, so that really helped out a lot. Said you can never underestimate these motor mounts and stuff. So that's going to do it for this video. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and as always I invite you to subscribe. Thanks for watching.